Hi. Today's episode is in part brought to you by winter. And winter is coming. Melbourne is heading into winter, so I think it is high time for us to make an episode about fashion. Now, I am not a fashion expert, and I really don't think I've covered this topic before, but fashion is something that I'm really interested in. You know, it's kind of like going on with the theme of how to be a more well-rounded person. I think fashion is one of the things that most people don't talk about, but nevertheless, I think it's a very important part of life. You know, reading is important, fashion is important, you know, having a good cup of coffee is important, and because right now it's getting colder and colder, it's easier and easier to kind of like cultivate a fashion sense in winter. So I think today I am going to share with you guys three principles that I stick to when it comes down to presenting myself to the wider world. So back when I was in the 11th grade, I got accepted into this engineering school and science and engineering school. And back then I happened to be a very, scientifically driven person. And the first thing people would say to me whenever I rock up in my fully dressed school uniform was that you look rather posh. And I'm just like, I didn't quite understand what that meant. And people were like, why is your tie so perfectly tied? And why is your shirt so perfectly, tucked in? And why is your blazer so clean? And I'm just like to myself, well, isn't that just the basics of how to present yourself better? And then I dug into my past and I dug into my childhood and I realized, no, it's not at all intuitive. Now, when I was younger, my dad was the kind of person that would give me an on-the-spot lecture if I tucked in a shirt wrong, right? If I tucked in a shirt the wrong way, he would just tell me, hey, that looks like crap. You need to fix that, right? So then he taught me how to fix it, and then I fixed it, and he was happy, and I was happy. So over time, I started developing this kind of not passion, but this sense of discipline just for presentation, just kind of very disciplined approach to presenting myself either in front of the camera or in front of other people. So whenever I dress in slack clothing, there's kind of this, I'm rather uncomfortable in baggy clothes because, ever since I was a young man, a really young man, that was kind of beating into me with a stick. So over time, I just kind of stuck to this very formal, very kind of a very uniform fashion sense. And that's going to lead us to the first point. Dressing yourself should be an expression of who you are. I think this goes beyond any kinds of fashion trends. This goes beyond the price of your clothing. This goes beyond, social recognition. I think clothing or fashion sense, when done right, it should be something that's just a part of you. It should be something that's representative of who you are. If you're kind of a laid-back person, dress like a laid-back person. If you're a serious person, dress like a serious person. If you are kind of a nerdy person, dress like a nerdy person. Because what's going to happen otherwise is that you're going to spend a lot of money into things that you don't care about. You're going to spend a lot of effort into packaging yourself into something that you can't even recognize anymore. If you walk down the street, there are hundreds of these people who are in designer brand clothing, who are obviously very, very wealthy. They got money in their pockets, but you can just kind of tell they have no idea how to put themselves together. I call it bad taste because it's not just a reflection of, spendthrifting on, useless brands. It's also a reflection of the fact that this person had done no self-discovery work whatsoever. So their only choice in the matter was that, hey, I'm going to go into a store and I'm going to buy the most expensive thing in the store, which to me is just stupid. So don't be those people who are just spendthrifts, who, goes into stores, who picks up the most expensive article of clothing and just calls it a day, because that's kind of dumb. You want to do a lot of self-discovery work before even setting foot into a clothing store. So ask yourself, how would I feel in this article of clothing? Let it be a sweater, be a tie, be a shirt. What kind of shirt? What's my body type like? What kind of person do I want to be? And once you get that figured out, fashion should come, or your own very unique fashion sense should come very naturally to you. Real fashion should be something that you just slip into, right? It's you. It's so you that it's you, right? So when people look at you, they're going to say whoa, that jacket is you. That's a very important point, which is going to bring me to the second point, experimentation. Experimentation is very much like reading. You don't just jump into a bookstore and pick up 5 different books and expect yourself to love every single one of those books. What typically tends to happen is that you head into a store, you buy a book, you read the book, and you realize it's a horrible book, and so you throw the book away. So you go grab another book, You read it again, you read another book, and you realize, holy shit, this is much better than the other book that I read. Over time, you build up a sense of judgment in terms of like, no objective judgments, but just subjective judgments because, reading is a very subjective thing. So over time, you'll develop this kind of like intuition about what you like to read and what you hate to read. And the same with fashion. Put some time away for just browsing around stores. Put some time away for just browsing catalogs, looking at lookbooks. It's the kind of thing that gets refined over time. So don't be afraid to put some time into this thing, because if you want to really present yourself well, first you need to discover who you are, and second you need to experiment. And the cool thing with that is that as you mature, you realize that the way you dress will gradually transform. It's like your personality, right? How you present yourself to the wider world is going to change over time. And years into your personal development journey, you realize that, oh my God, I've got a pretty good taste. And here is the last point of consideration. For me, there's nothing more important than items that last a very long time. Items that are a little more expensive, items that are a little more kind of like durable, because fast fashion, in a sense, pisses me off like nothing else. So I really don't have many pieces of clothing in my wardrobe. In fact, if you watch a lot of my videos, you'd realize that like I tend to recycle a lot of the same pieces of clothing over and over and over again, because I know those pieces are high quality pieces. I know those pieces will last me a very long time. And over time, this wardrobe of yours is gonna become a personal staple, right? It's quite cool. Before I buy a piece of clothing, I kind of have to do like a mental check. I'm just like, will I wear this in 5 years? Will I wear this again in 7 years? If the answer is yes, and if the material is locally sourced, because in Australia, we tend to have a pretty good wool industry. If it checks all the boxes, the clothing might be a little expensive up front. It might be a little crazy if I check out the price tag, but if I take everything else into consideration, if I know this is something that I would wear, for example, in the next 5 to 6 years, then I would happily pay the price. So take those checks and balances into consideration whenever you are thinking about getting something, getting a new cardigan, getting a new sweater, getting a new jacket, getting a new something. Make sure that it's something that's gonna end up in your wardrobe like forever. Because here's the thing, you might have like 1 million pieces of clothing. You'd really only wear like, for example, 7 pieces of those clothing, and find out like the common traits that unify those pieces, and go out there and do this calculation in your head. All right, do I want to stick to fast fashion that's going to cost me more down the track, or do I want to invest in something that's really kind of like premium, but that's going to last me a very long time? And things that stick around longer, they are going to become a part of you. They're going to become like a personal staple, which is why whenever you talk about someone like Fran Lebowitz, she's got a really distinct personal style. Whenever you talk about Neil Gaiman, he's also got a very distinct personal style, and that is a result of them choosing something that's going to benefit them in the very long run over something that's just immediately fashionable. So those are some of my thoughts on fashion, on stupid trendy brands. And a lot of you guys asked me, what do you use to write? What notebook would you recommend? So I thought to myself, why don't I just compile a list of my gear, my daily carry. So I've decided to compile a list of all the little gadgets that I use on a daily basis. If you feel like supporting the channel, if you feel like this list might benefit you, be sure to check out this list in the description down below on Patreon. Anyhow, that's all I have for today. Expect more rambly videos like this one. And hooray, didn't light today's video using window light. This is a very consistent lamp. It's a reading lamp, but it worked. Anyhow, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good week. Dress well, dress sharp, and I will see you in the next one.